You're not fully gripping, you're kind of just sort of pinching them and letting them bounce. Hey, I'm Kevin from Tame Impala, and I'm going to be talking about some of my favourite drum sounds and drum parts that I've loved and cherished over the years and probably been influenced by. I think people think I'm kind of joking when I say I spend 90% of my time on drums when I'm working on a song, but it's dead true. It's like me chasing the dragon, you know? I love drum sounds that are just fuzzed out and just destroyed sounding. But I also love the opposite of that. I had to narrow the category, or it was going to be way too difficult to pick my favorite. I had to just say, like, okay, it's drums that are played by people, you know, like recorded real drums. I think that one's incredible because that was recorded in like 67 or something. It's like a breakbeat. It's like a breakbeat before there were breakbeats. It's so robotic and repetitive that I feel like if that song came out today, it would be filed under electronic, you know? Even though it's just someone playing the drums. The hi-hat, which goes up and down, you control it with your left foot. When you play a sort of jazz beat, you keep that going to keep time. But if you're really clever, you can do it on the off beat, which means you do it in between those on beats. So instead of going, you go. Playing on the ride cymbal. The ride cymbal is the big brass one. Playing that with a sort of a trip hop kick and snare, and counting on the hi-hat is that's how you get that sound. I feel like everyone has that like riff that they just play when you pick up a guitar. It's like muscle memory. Like that beat is the one I do when I jump on drums now, because it sounds the coolest. Now I've reached that age, I've tried to do all those things the best I can. Obviously, no discussion about drum sounds and drum playing would be complete without talking about John Bonham and the Led Zeppelin drum sound. Like the famous Led Zeppelin drum break is Levy, When the Levy Breaks. So I was gonna do When the Levy Breaks, but I kind of just feel like everyone else, it's been covered, you know. I feel like most people got the wrong idea. Like there's this idea that Led Zeppelin drums are like super, like powerful, solid. People say like hit like a bricklayer. But I don't think that's actually true. I think there's a lot more of a delicate way that he played. The way he sort of goes from smacking the drum and playing a teensy little ghost note. It's just a really quiet hit. And it's usually a really quiet hit in between a normal hit. It just adds dynamic to your playing. Also with the double kick, I noticed there. So double kick is boom, 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 boom. You've got one foot on the kick pedal, but you do it twice super quick, which is a technique that takes a long time to get. But I think he kind of like exploited his ability to do that. And then from then on, everyone was just doing everyone was trying to do double kick. That was like, they became a part of skilled rock drumming, you know? Now I've reached that age, I've tried to do all those things the best I can. So I think the reason why people think that Bonham hit the drums so hard and why people, when they try to replicate Bonham, they just smack the drums is because the compression makes it sound louder than it is. You can hit a drum quite quietly, and using compression you can make it sound a lot more energetic. But for me, like, emotion in rock drumming is just John Bonham, you know, that's it. His father works some days for 14 hours, and you can bet he barely makes a dollar. So I'm pretty sure Stevie Wonder is playing drums in that song. I read somewhere that he did the drums first, and he knew the whole song in his head. He just played the drums with no backing, no nothing. He just played along to the song in his head and then just played the song back over the top of that with all the other instruments, which is mind-boggling. And in that way, it's like the most expressive, some of the most expressive drumming. He's kind of just feeling it out in real time, which again is kind of why it reminds me of me. And obviously I've got the drum beat in my head before I start, but it's fun. It's like drumming's the most fun when you don't know what you're doing. He's playing quite heavy on the hi-hat, which is cool. Like some drum sounds just make me dream. You know, I'm just like, you know, and the hi-hat on that song particularly, I just go, I could just listen to that on its own over and over.
His mother goes to scrub the floors for me.
Some drums make you want to dance and some drums make you want to strut. And that's a strut. I just love that counting on the hi-hat in that song. And it's just so brooding and so ominous even. And it's just the simplest thing. It's just counting the hi-hat on quarter notes. I don't think it was an accident that ended up being so loud in the mix. You know, I feel like if he was just counting, they would have turned it down in the bounce down. But it's nice and loud, and with all the sort of the strings swelling in the background. There is something categorically different and qualitatively different about someone hitting something, multiple hits of the same thing, versus someone hitting it once and then digitally reproducing it. I believe that the brain can pick up when something is being digitally reproduced. If it was someone they just sampled a hi-hat and they just played it, I think that would give a different feeling to the sound of someone just going. Do you know what I mean? Portishead drum sounds are like one of the holy grail drum feels and like approaches to drums, and have been for years. It's a breakbeat. It's a breakbeat category, but obviously so much more moody. I just love Jeff Barrow's approach to drums. It's a pretty standard pattern. He does a actually, I don't actually know what that's called at the end. Like a buzz roll. You can hear that in Tame Impala drums. So on Nortois has it. Dum da rum da rum dum. When I'm doing that. It's like a marching technique. You sort of push it into the drum so that it sort of bounces along. So you're bouncing the sticks on the skin, and it just creates this kind of flutter of sound, which is just so kind of like cool sounding. Do you want to get us the snare drum on the Ludwig? Oh, thanks, bro. You're not fully gripping. You're kind of just sort of pinching them and letting them bounce. I actually have really bad technique. Like I never got taught to do that. I kind of just did it from ear. So those drums, they sound super impactful and punchy, but they're hitting it extremely quietly. But because of the compression, it sounds like they're hitting it a lot harder than they are. It's too loud for the medium, and kind of it gets a bit crushed. That's where you can get some real energy in the sound, because it just sounds distorted and blown out. So that's Steve Droz playing drums there. I love his style too. It's just so bombastic but emotive. It shows you that drumming that is loud and strong doesn't have to sound angsty. It can sound ecstatic and uplifting. That's the thing. Yeah, that pattern is really common and really standard, but for some reason it's just played with such feeling. So those drums are super saturated. Saturation is kind of like the classy word for distortion, because distortion can sound angry and like, you know, metal obviously has a lot of distortion. Distortion is when the signal is too loud for what it's trying to get through. If this is a waveform, it'll cut it off there, so it'll go, you know, and it can't. So that creates this distortion sound. But in that context, to me, it just sounds so psychedelic and so ecstatic and uplifting. It changed everything for me with drum sounds. suddenly I just wanted all my drums just to be completely blown out. You can see at which point I went to Japan and saw Flaming Lips live, and then went back and recorded Lonerism, and the drums sounded like that. Like you can hear. So I mean, like a big part of me going to Dave Fridman was like, I want that drum sound. You know, he's the one that mixed In a Speaker and Lonerism. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention his name in all this, because it's his production that led to that drum sound. Sick drumming. The drummer's name is Joey Waronker, who actually came to the studio once. He played in my friend's band. He played on a song. We've always been a big fan of his drumming. I guess probably since that song, you know. I think it's more coming from jazz drumming, because that's where like psych rock drumming, that's what its roots are in. All those early psych rock drummers were jazz drummers, or their favorite drummers were jazz drummers, like Elvin Jones and stuff. Elvin Jones. For me, it's kind of like a benchmark in like modern drum sound. Like the drum sounds are so kind of psychedelic and unhinged. There's more drum fill than regular beat, you know? It's basically just one big drum fill, which is obviously just, I guess, probably what Beck wanted him to do, just let him loose, you know? Because it's just such a free sound, you know? It's just someone just rumbling around the kit, not feeling like that they have a job to like hold down the band, you know, because like traditionally that's the drummer's role. It's like you're holding down the rhythm section, holding it down. But like that's a song that's a good example of that's not the drummer's role, you know. The drummer can be going wild over the top. Love that song. I feel like that album, it was one of the last great rock albums. That whole album's drumming. It's Dave Grohl, who's obviously of Nirvana drumming fame. Queens of the Stone Age, a lot of that Queens of the Stone Age song is just that like motoric, like kind of really robotic rock and roll. And then like Dave Grohl is like, he's like the modern rock drummer, right? He's so disciplined, so metronomic, so hard. You can tell he's whacking them. Like John Bonham, he uses drum fills as a motif sometimes. So like in that bit, like any regular drummer would have just played through that. But he made a part out of it, and that created kind of like the heart of the song in a way. Like that kind of section of music, it made it into a thing. I think Dave Grohl recorded the drums to a metronome on top of all the music, I think. Maybe that's a secret. But anyway, seeing it being recorded on like Pro Tools or whatever, to the grid, which is like the metronome, it was like, he said it was just mesmerizing how spot on he was. Like hit after hit. Like it's human to drift in and out with it, because it's really difficult to always be on time, but apparently like he's unbelievably good.
Dave playing on the beat, is that an example of a drummer being in the pocket?
The pocket, yeah, the pocket is a funny concept, and I still don't know where I stand on it, but a drummer playing in the pocket is kind of like laid back, not too excited, not ahead of the beat. They're kind of just behind it, but not so behind it that they're out of time. Playing in the pocket is more of a feeling, I believe. I don't think Queens of Stone Age drumming is about necessarily being in the pocket. I think it's just about having that just unrelenting robotic feel. I feel like one of the things that has to happen for you to want to dance or like strut or air drum is that you have to feel like you can rely on the drums. Like when you feel like you can't rely on the drums, you're like, oh, I'll probably just like sit down, hey. But in that song, you're like, oh yeah, when I do that, it's gonna be that. Even when he does a drum fill, they sound reliable. When I was asked to pick a couple of my own songs for drum sounds, after having listened to all my favorite drum sounds, listening to mine, I was like, that's trash, trash. Even though I care so much about my drums, and I am proud of them. I'm proud of my drum sounds. But it was tough. I'm playing a pretty sort of standard hip-hop beat, moving from normal snare hit to a rim shot. In fact, you can hear, the start of that song, you can hear me, I haven't quite decided on how I'm going to hit the snare. Rim shot is when you hit like just the rim of the snare. You get that kind of... The drum sound like this song, it's kind of the coming together of a lot of different styles and drum sounds that I love, which is sometimes the hard bit about me writing a drum part and recording and producing drum sounds, because I love so many different things that are at the opposite ends of the spectrum. I love drums that are super minimal, like R&B, kind of just like an 808 and there's nothing else in the mix other than just maybe like a really quiet, small sounding hi-hat. But I also love Race for the Prize, distorted, blown out, thrashy drums, you know? Like I'm never truly happy with the drum sound. I'm like, whenever I finish a song or an album, I'm like, well, I did as well as I could in the time that I had. You know, I send it off to the master and it's like, it wasn't the best drum sound, but I'll get it next time, you know? Like, it must be like a month later, a couple of months later, I was walking past a bar. You kind of hear the drums before you hear the music, and I was like, oh, that's a nice drum sound. And it was that song. I was like, oh shit, it's me. Oh shit, it's New Person. I was like, that was a great snare sound. I remember thinking like, great snare sound. I should be Shazamming this, you know? Which I guess shows me that like, you're your own harshest critic. So it took me listening to it, thinking it was someone else's drum sound for me to actually appreciate it, which, you know, that's just the way it goes, I guess. Yeah, it was good enough for Rihanna, apparently.